Hi, I'm David Akimi with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Today I'm here with my colleague, Bill McGee.
Hi,
How are you doing today, Bill?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So today we're going to talk about some disturbing trends that we're seeing in the current market, seeing some of our colleagues and some of our competitors do. Unfortunately, this market with its limited inventory is just really bringing out the worst in people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people taking advantage of the desperation in the market.
Right.
We've got literally 1/10 the normal amount of houses to choose from, and interest rates have been pretty low. They're not now starting to climb a little bit, but we essentially have a housing shortage right now and a high demand situation, and it's just not equaling a good situation. We've got a lot of agents that are doing somewhat questionable things to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and there's desperation on the part of buyers and buyers agents. There is greed on the part of sellers and their
And
agents.
listing agents, yeah.
I don't blame a seller
No.
for thinking, "Oh, I'm about to get $1 jillion for my house," but their agent, it's their job to maintain the good faith and fair dealing.
Integrity, exactly. Is be fair and honest, yeah.
So good faith and fair dealing is going to be an overarching theme here. That is an actual legal definition by the Real Estate Commission, and it's a catch-all. So if you violate something in black and white, that's a violation. But it means we're supposed to be honest with each other.
With our clients and with our agent on the other side of the table. So,
Right.
like you said, how many times do we get into a negotiation and we, our client asks us a question, we say, well, I'll ask the listing agent, or they say, where do you think the offers are at right now? And I'll say, I'll ask the listing agent, I'll ask how competitive we are. And like you said, they look at you and say, well, do you think they'll tell the truth? And
Yeah, I have buyer clients that tell me, do they answer you honestly when you ask? And I say, they're supposed to.
Yeah.
So let's get to number one.
Yeah, number one would be coming soon abuse. So one of the things I'm seeing big time is that we're seeing a big percentage of listings come to the market in a coming soon status. And essentially what that means is they can put it on the MLS that way, but more often than not, they're actually sticking it on a site like Zillow or Trulia,
Or their Facebook page.
Or just a sign in the yard. If it's a busy neighborhood with a lot of traffic, they'll put a coming soon rider on their sign. Any of the above things, or probably a combination of most of those, they do. And we should preface that coming soon listings have legitimate uses. That's why it exists as a status on the MLS.
It means you don't have your photos ready.
Your staging's not ready.
Yeah, or you haven't fixed something.
Yeah.
But boy, when you see a coming soon where the photos are all done and everything looks great, it's not a real excuse for being coming soon.
Coming soon, exactly.
Yeah.
That to me is a red flag.
So why are they doing it?
Starting to see a ton of it. Well, I can tell you why they're doing it. They are doing it because anytime they hang it out on these major portals as a coming soon, because there's such a massive shortage of inventory, they know there's a good chance that somebody without an agent may reach out to them and call them and say, hey, I saw your listing. I don't have a realtor of my own. I'm interested in it. And to that listing agent, dollar signs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the cha-ching sound.
Because we call it a double ender.
Double ender.
They get both sides of the commission.
They get both sides of the commission.
Yeah.
So how is that wrong? In a slow market where it's hard to sell a house at all, any buyer is normally welcome. In this market where we're seeing multiple offers and bidding wars, anything your agent does that puts you in a position where they can try and take it off the market early without exposing it to the bidding war.
It's a disservice for the seller, which brings us to number two.
I have interested buyers. So if you're looking at a mail piece that may have come, or you get a letter sent that's handwritten on a nice card from a realtor that says, I have buyers interested in your neighborhood. They're looking for a house just like yours. Well, I got news for you. So does every other buyer's agent out there.
We do.
There's so many buyers out there that just can't find a place because the inventory is so short that, that's just typically a come on. And it kind of comes along the line of that coming soon thing. I mean, they may really have some buyers that are interested in your neighborhood that are looking, but guess what? If they still have those buyers, they must not be that competitive of a buyer because they would have already won a bidding war by now. So they're trying to potentially bring their non-competitive or less than competitive buyer and hopefully get hired by you as the listing agent so that they can take your listing off market, hook their buyer up with it, and deprive you of the bidding war.
I have a client who is desperate for this one little pocket of awesome new homes in Broomfield. And they said, do you do that old school thing where you send a mailer or knock on doors? And I said, yeah, I used to do that. And it was sometimes successful. Yeah. But they're asking me, would you go in there and say, anybody want to sell a house? I have interested buyers. I said, I would be glad to do it. And that seller would be crazy to do it. Yeah. And then, as you said before, I'll have a moral dilemma. Because if they say, sure, well, I'll sell it to your client, I'm going to think, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't do
because
that.
if you give me the listing, it would be great if I did, I'm going to do a bidding war and get 200,000-300,000 over asking
Yeah.
in that neighborhood anyway.
Exactly.
So
And
it's not good for the seller.
Not good for your seller if you bring them in and just plug them straight into one of your buyers. So if you see a mail piece or an advertisement or a handwritten card come to your door that says, I've got interested buyers in your neighborhood, throw it away, toss it in the trash, or interview that agent and say, hey, if your buyers are interested in it, we're going to put this on the market and you feel free to bring them through the house.
And I have actually said that. By the way, don't throw it away if my face is on it. I have these great mailers. Don't throw that away. Read it. It's awesome. And call me. No, I do legitimately, and I don't have a moral dilemma when I say I have interested buyers in this neighborhood. And if I catch somebody that says, actually, we were thinking about selling our house, yay me, I just got a listing. And I will tell them, well, look, I do have this interested buyer, but you'd be crazy to just sell it off market.
You need to let them compete with it.
Let's put it on the market. Yeah. Hopefully my client ends up the winner,
but you're certainly not going to just plug them straight in and sell it off market. Yeah, that's anybody trying to convince you to do that, you need to tell them to take a hike. Yeah, and the next one that we're seeing a lot of is along the same lines. It's a misleading type of listing advertising because we're hearing so many sellers say houses are selling themselves. Yeah, the stuff's flying off the shelf with multiple offers. We don't need a fancy agent. We don't necessarily need our house staged and photographed by a high-end photographer. We'll just take the cheap agent. In fact, I saw a listing that advertisement that says they'll list it for 1%.
And we're going to be careful not to mention the name of this giant multi-billion-dollar would crush us with their lawyers. But yeah, they have great ads that say 1%. And our internet guru, Sawyer, who's behind the camera right now, he had to show us, and we're pretty internet savvy, it's not even an asterisk. You have to click a link and then a pop-up comes up and says,
the fine print.
Just kidding about 1%. It's really more like 4. Because you have to pay a co-op fee to the buyer's agent. We call it a co-op fee. The seller is paying for the listing agent's fee and the buyer's agent's fee. And this, I almost said the name of the company. This big company is saying, we'll do it for 1%. We really mean 4, 4.5, something like that. Here's why they're doing that. Why would they do it for 1%? Well, first of all, the people they employ. And who works there basically? Is it really good realtors?
Salaried agents who didn't make it on their own in the traditional market. Who would go take a salary working for a fifth or a sixth of what a normal agent makes if they were good enough to be a normal agent?
We probably fired them.
We probably fired them. Exactly. They couldn't make it. They didn't have the due diligence. So they're great employees. They're great if you plug them into a machine and feed them appointments all day long and say, look, we're going to give you guaranteed people to show up in front of, but you're going to take these guaranteed set leads for a fraction of what a traditional realtor would take.
They don't care. They don't have the right skin in the game to get their sellers top dollar. So
they couldn't build their own business. They couldn't work their way to the top of the industry on their own, so they're certainly not going to do any better when they go to negotiate for you. It's a lot like hiring maybe the public defender. If you get in trouble and have to go to court, I can't quite afford a real stud attorney, so I'm going to take the free guy that the court gives me, and you know how that normally ends up for people. It's not.
By the way, not to diss all those people that work there, I had one agent that worked there who was the listing agent, and I did a deal with them, and afterwards I said, "You're way too good to work here." And he was like, huh? He was brand new and just thought this is where you start.
Sure.
Well, he works at one of the big brands now.
Does he? Yeah.
He's great and he's not there anymore.
I can tell you too that I've lined up across from several of them where I'm the listing agent, they're the buyer's agent, and I've cleaned their clock. It's like taking
same with me.
Baby. In fact, the house I sold, my personal home, the buyer that they represented was represented by that big company, and they came and I didn't actually have any other offers on the table. They were the sole offer, and she still let them give me all the terms I asked for and pay over. They asked me, "Do you have other offers?" And of course, in good faith and fair dealing, I said, I've got a lot of interest in it. We've had a ton of showings, and I've got several people calling me and circling the wagons. So yeah, it looks like this could be, a competitive situation. Never did I tell her, yes, I have other offers. I told her it looks like I've got probably some more coming in, which at the time was true. And of course, she took the bait and wrote terms way over my asking price when she really didn't have to. What would you have done in that situation?
I would have gone back to my client and said they have nothing.
They have nothing. They got nothing. They're bluffing. And if they do have something, we'll write it in a way that they've got to show us what they have in order to get us to get there.
Escalation clause.
She didn't put an escalation clause in.
Which is in number 4 in a minute. But just to get back to the global business strategy of that company, Why do they do it for 1%? First of all, they don't care as much.
And it's not really 1%, it's 4%.
Right. Second of all, they have this great search engine. I hate that they do.
Yeah.
We have a really good one called Real Scout that we use to send listings to our clients. Sure. And I have clients that are like, I really like theirs. And I'm like, whatever. So what that leads to, though, is you like searching on their site. You see a house, you click, I want to see it, and they double end the deal.
That's in one of their agents.
So they're not really making 1%. A lot of the time, they're getting the whole 4%. And that is a critical part of their business model.
But it's misleading, considering that they've got bus ads that say list your house for 1%, giant billboards that say list your house for 1%, magazine ads that say list your house for 1%, when it's really 4 to 4.5%.
And then one last thing on discount brokerages as a whole, and I did a video on this a few years ago. If you save 2%, say, on your listing to go with a discount brokerage versus good guys like us, there's a potential that you lose 8%. And I didn't make that statistic up. I looked it up. And National Association of Realtors.
They just don't have the skills to work your multiple offers up after it's all said and done. They take the offers at face value and present them like they are, where you and I, or a good agent, really works those offers on the back end to get them up where they
We do the correct marketing. There's a lot of things that go into being a good listing agent, and so save 2%, but maybe miss out on 6 or 8%.
And on the flip side, you hire them as a buyer's agent because they advertise that they're going to rebate a percentage of their commission. And I'm sure that the buyer that bought the last house that I sold got a percentage of their commission rebated, but they also paid $50,000 over my asking price when they weren't really competing with somebody. So they got $2,000 back from that agent, but that agent also let them step right into $50,000 overbid too. So. Did they get their money's worth with that rebate of 30% of the commission?
It's an interesting job we have because it's 2 jobs. Yeah. When we are a buyer's agent, it's a very different job from when we're a listing agent, which brings us to number 4, negotiation, shady negotiation. Some of the tactics that we're seeing and practices that we're seeing that are just not cool.
No, and it comes back to the good faith and fair dealing. When you got multiple offers coming in, usually if they're written by an intelligent buyer's agent, they've got an escalation clause in place. So quite often when we're on the receiving end of a stack of offers, we've got 5 different offers with 5 different escalation clauses. Of course, they're all written with the start price extremely low, and all the clauses say they'll beat any competing offer by a certain amount. So you essentially have escalation clauses bouncing off of each other, but they're bouncing off of those opening price points. So really, these agents need to try and work those offers up some without the escalation clause, so that they've got something high enough to really get the back and forth going and start to really engage those escalation clauses at a high number.
Right.
So it comes back to what you said, when we reach out to them and ask them, where do these offers stand? Are they going to tell us the truth or not? They're supposed to, but they don't. And tell us about what happened to you.
They're supposed to tell us the truth or say, please submit your highest and best. Sometimes they clam up.
Yeah. Clamming up's perfectly legit.
That's okay. And then you and I go into crystal ball mode. And I joke about crystal ball, but we've been doing this a long time, and we've done hundreds and hundreds of these. Yeah. So we do have a reasonably cloudy crystal ball where we can say, here's what I'm thinking is happening. Yeah. Here's what I think you should probably submit. And so using my crystal ball a week and a half ago, we did escalation clause up to 1.65, and so did somebody else. And so the listing agent said, hey, you're sort of tied for first. What's your real max? And my client was desperate for this house. Yeah. And they're also from the Bay Area, so they're used to spending $300,000 or $400,000 over asking or more. So they said, let's do an escalation clause up to 1.8. Well, that, I think, got the listing agent sort of salivating over the 1.8. Yeah. How do we get this 1.8? And she said, so forget escalation clause. What's your absolute highest and best?
Submit this without an escalation clause.
And I said, my highest and best at $10,000 higher than the next best. And she said, just give it a number. So we said 1.77. Well, the whole time, she had her own client that she was going to double end in her back pocket.
So she knew that she was trying to sell it to that other client regardless of what you came across with.
So she used us to get the bid high. And by the way, that could be construed as just good negotiation. Yeah. Except there is one loser in this whole deal. Not my client who didn't win that house. And not her seller, because her seller got $300,000 over asking. It was that buyer. And so, man, we dealt with this so often, especially when we were doing Zillow advertising. People would call us and say, I'm interested in this house. And they'd say, oh, I thought you were the listing agent. because people think they're going to get a
Better
smashing deal.
And that's exactly what these people did. They went to the
They
listing
thought they'll get a great deal by going straight to the listing agent.
What did she do? She worked them mercilessly up to 1.8, and she, they approached her thinking they were going to get a better deal.
She was still advocating for the seller.
Yeah, which she shouldn't have been. She should have
Could
been neutral.
not. By the way, we keep saying she. That listing agent
Should have been neutral.
he or she. Should have been neutral. That's called transaction broker. As soon as we're representing both sides of the deal,
Supposed to go neutral.
we go neutral. We're supposed to say to our seller, here's the offer. Yeah. What do you think? And if they say, what do you think? We say,
I can't advise.
I can't, right. And if the buyer says, what do you think I should offer?
I can't advise.
Which is what we do as buyer's agents.
But they clearly weren't doing that. She was still actively working things back and forth in the best interest of the seller, and essentially screwed the buyer that approached her directly.
That buyer paid a lot.
That buyer paid way overpaid. That buyer came to her in good faith thinking they were getting neutral representation, and she was absolutely still working in the seller's best interest.
My crystal ball, my feeling is she used my buyer and my offer, probably got the buyer that ended up going under contract, probably brought them up $100,000.
So I ran into a similar situation, and you played it right. You presented it to her verbally. She still managed to work it. Sometimes the other competing person that you're trying to compete against won't take the bait if it's not in writing. I'd say more often than not that's the case. So in my situation, I had an agent that basically said, if you'll come in at, I think it was 1.3 million, and it was started off at 1.1. She said 1.3 will be enough to get it. If you'll resubmit your offer, no escalation clauses, highest and best at 1.3, you're going to get the house. Of course, I thought she was giving me good faith and fair dealings. I thought, great. I had my buyer restructure the offer at 1.3. We sent it over to us. 30 minutes later, I get word that they've gone with another offer. I'm like, you told me straight to my face I'm going to get it if I resubmit at that level. Lesson learned. If I could rewind the tape and relive that, I would have basically said, my verbal offer is 1.3. We agree to your terms. Write a counter, send it back to me, and we'll sign it. That way I would not have given her anything in writing to work the other offer up with. It would have only been verbal. Which I
tried that on my deal. I said, counter us, we'll do it at this dollar, and she just didn't.
You did it, and she just didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have that foresight, but I can certainly assure you from this point forward I will. If I find myself in that position again, I'm going to say, you've got a verbal that we will go to that number, put it in a written counter, and we'll sign it. That way it puts the leverage in my people's court, because once they write something and return
we sign it, we're under contract.
We sign it, we're under contract. I don't give them anything in writing to take back and work that other offer with. So that's a really good point. What the last one that brings us to is something that isn't necessarily happening with agents. It's happening with builders. And I've actually talked about this on a similar video that we did where we discussed the 5 questionable things builders are doing in 2022, because builders, just like listing agents, are taking advantage of this market. But this one was such a big, powerful point that we thought it bared repeating. One of the things we're seeing happen with builders, and it's mostly the small mom and pops, they're blaming it on the rising construction costs, but we're literally seeing some of the small builders here in town put someone under contract on a dirt start property, and they've got a small clause in the contract that says, we contracted you at, let's just say $600,000. However, we reserve the right, if building materials increase between now and the time you close, to increase this contract at will, how we see fit. And if you don't pay what we raise it to when it's time to close, you're going to forfeit all of your deposit. And
which is usually a lot. It's usually 2 or 3%.
Especially on a dirt start, where they take a big percentage also of the structural options and the finishes that they pick in the design center. So we're seeing some of these little builders actually put a floating clause in their new build contract that says they can raise the price through the 10 months that you're going up. And I can tell you they're going to almost certainly do it, because building materials are going up, and even more so than building materials, we're just seeing prices increase across the board. We've had crazy appreciation. In fact, the neighborhood that I'm in is about a year old. It's a small neighborhood, so it only took it a year to close out. The model that I'm standing in literally started at $850 at the beginning of the year, and the last ones that they sold at the end of the year went for $1.150. So they literally went up $300,000 in a year. And I can imagine that if you were with one of the small builders where you had floated that cost at the beginning of the year and closed at the end, they're going to try and charge $300,000 more than you thought you contracted it for, because they're trying to realize all that appreciation gain rather than let you have it as the buyer. So my advice would be, if you run into a small builder that tries to put a clause like that in front of you, stand up, walk away.
Yeah, and I think this is, we've talked for years and years about why you should be represented even with a builder. And people think you go into the sales center and just like I'll go to the listing agent, go into the builder, maybe I'll get a better deal. The contracts that we use to sell resale homes are 17 pages long, 17 I think.
Standard.
And they're standardized. Everyone's the same.
And they're written in favor of the consumer,
Very much, the buyer. Builder contracts are 115 pages usually, sometimes 90, but sometimes 120. And 115 of those 120 pages say you will never see your deposit back.
Here's why. Here's 100 ways why we won't give you
right. And it also says, we can delay up to a year, and
we can essentially have our way with you, and you're going to like it and say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?"
Right. And so it's another good reason why you should have somebody fighting for you.
Yeah, fighting for you. And perfect point. The last time, and I'll wrap this up, but the last one that I encountered where I saw that clause, they didn't mention it. We sat there for an hour and they talked about everything, and I dawned on me at the end of it, I need to ask this little builder if they've got that clause. I've not dealt with them. When I asked her, of course, she got this kind of skitsed out look on her face and started to stutter and up. I said, "Do you raise the price? Do you have a clause that allows you to raise the price?" Well, and of course she did. And, she didn't volunteer it in a whole hour. So that goes back to your point. If those people had walked in unrepresented, she definitely didn't bring it up in the first hour. Would she have pointed it out when they contracted, or would she have skimmed over it? My bet is, like most builder people trying to get a 115-page contract signed in a 40-minute sitting, they're trying to scoot you through that thing quickly. They definitely don't. They're like, "You can read this later when you get home." And I can't tell you how many times my biggest function in a builder signing is to slow that person down and say, no, we want to read this. Slow down for a minute. In fact, I usually request a copy of the contract the evening before.
I do too.
I familiarize myself with everything in it. I go through it with a highlighter. I find all the weird sticky stuff, and when they're rushing through it, but come to that, I say, we're going to stop here and I'm going to explain this.
Well, the other thing about being prolific and doing a lot of deals, when it's Lennar, I've done a lot of Lennars, and I like Lennar, so I'm going to say their name out loud. I tell them, or whoever I'm working with. If it's a builder I've done deals with before, I send an email, not verbal, and say, "Has your contract changed since last fall when I did the last one?" If they say no, I know I'm good because I studied it. And I have an email to that effect.
We have a database of contracts. I've got 25 different builder contracts on the desktop in my computer in a folder, so I can reference back at a glance if I know we're going to go talk to that builder, and I can actually send it over to my clients all highlighted out already and let them see everything that is a unique sticking point with that particular builder's contract.
So we went long, but this is critical stuff for people to know. And thanks for watching if you're still watching. And what's the bottom line?
Bottom line is you probably should walk into that builder's office with an agent. They're not going to give you a better deal. Right now, builders are demanding their asking price and they're getting it. So it's not like you're going to walk in with an agent and they're going to negotiate harder or refuse to give you some discount that somebody unaccompanied would get. Because I got news for you, nobody's getting discount. The builders are selling stuff faster than they can release lots right now. So you're going to pay the same price if you walk in with an agent as you do without.
I will raise my Duff beer to good faith and fair dealing. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.